Hello, everyone, and sorry about yesterday. It was a day. But yes, back here recording this lecture. We'll see how this goes. I tend to be all over the place when I record lectures by myself, so I'm going to really try to stay on topic. Yeah, so we'll just go for it. We're going to do the remainder of what we didn't finish last week, as well as this week's content. And then just a note on your participation notes. I changed the due date to Monday, so you have between now and Monday to watch this video, get those notes in. I'll try to keep it short-ish. I don't know. I have a feeling it's going to be around an hour, which is unfortunate, but I'll try my best and I'll stop talking now so that it gets shorter. But yeah, so I can't really do check-in, but I hope everybody is doing well. And I'm so sorry I missed everybody this week. The meditation, I won't do that just to shorten this a little bit, but you have access to the PowerPoint. You can do the meditation if you would like. Activity plan presentations, can't really do. Next week, we'll have the choice of social, emotional, and I believe science is the next one. I might be wrong. Go into last week's PowerPoint, do this week's PowerPoint on curriculum and documentation. I'll talk about our final project a little bit, upcoming assignments. Great, fantastic. So yeah, but meditation, feel free to play this video on your own PowerPoint that you may have open. I'm going to skip it for today. Activity plan, class 4 PowerPoint. Okay, so let me pause this recording in hopes to make it a little bit shorter. Pause. Oh, no, I'm pausing my share. I want to pause recording. Pause, stop recording. Okay, cool. Fantastic. If you see me bobbing my head, I saw the Deadpool movie a couple days ago and the new one, and I have bye stuck in my head. Okay, regardless. So we were talking about curriculum. We just went over creative curriculum last week, theme-based curriculum. It's theme-based, so a topic is selected based on a child or teacher's interest, hopefully the child's, and the inspiration for the curriculum content. So that theme, that topic is the inspiration for curriculum content. It provides exploration of the topic in each curriculum area. So say you choose like trees in this example, you look at the science of trees, art of trees, use trees for math, all of those curriculum areas. And teachers use like webbing or this is like a web chart, that the picture that you see, KWL charts and other tools to develop the curriculum. So essentially they have one common theme and they create little branches that branch out to different areas that can be talked about, covered, maybe of the children's interests. And then we have inquiry-based curriculum. It begins with, oh, I don't know if I can move my face. Oh, also I'm a floating head, which is so unfortunate. But it is what it is. Okay, so inquiry-based curriculum, it begins with questions, with curiosity, with inquiry. It begins with a problem and then you solve that problem. So teachers are facilitators who place the needs and ideas of students at the center of their curriculum. They want to know what the students' questions are, and then they build their curriculum based off of those questions. Those questions or like the problem solving to those questions or looking for the answers to those questions could last days, weeks, months, and it's really based on the child's interest levels. Inquiry-based learning involves developing questions, making observations, doing research to find out what information is already recorded, developing methods for experiments, developing instruments for data collection, collecting, analyzing, and interpreting data, and outlining possible explanations, and creating predictions for future study. And then we have the project approach. Phase 1, children choose a learning topic and connect that topic to prior knowledge. They create questions, and they make predictions. They're going to think about or hypothesize what may happen. Children then investigate the topic, create diagrams, charts, models, and then they create presentations to share knowledge with others. So the main difference between like inquiry-based curriculum and the project-based approach is that project-based approach has that community aspect of sharing your knowledge with others at the end of the project. Project-based learning, PBL, is really, really big in high schools, middle schools, elementary schools, and is definitely finding its way into preschools as well. So this is a KWL chart. So this is what we know, what we want to know, and what we learned. And yeah. Alrighty, hopefully this video, oh, okay, hold on. I don't think I shared the sound, so I'm just gonna make sure. Okay, all right, I think we'll be able to hear the video.
Children enter preschool at differing levels of development. Preschool professionals use many sources of information to determine whether a child needs specific types of support. Dr. Ann Gruenberg, an expert in early childhood special education, suggests ways that early education professionals can design strategies and collaborate with families to support the individual child's needs.
We know that early childhood is a really crucial time for children in general because we think of development as a dynamic process, and we know in young children their central nervous system development continues on during the first few years of life. So they're very, very responsive to environmental changes or environmental factors.
When Javier first came to Nilüfer Rezai's class, his parents wanted to make sure that his individual needs were met.
He came here about three and a half years old, so I was a little nervous because I thought he was little.
We felt that he would learn a lot more and be exposed to other kids, and maybe that was a better learning tool for him.
We want all children who enter our early childhood classroom to have access, participation, and support. And by that I mean we want them to have access to materials and experiences, be able to participate in any way that they are developmentally ready to participate, and we have to be ready to provide supports as needed to ensure that children have the opportunity to participate. Each child, when they enter our classroom, enters initially with us having some background information on them. So we start by having met their families, getting to know what their families like and their interests are.
He has a lot of interest in games. He learns a game very fast. He gets really comfortable.
Speaking to the families and learning about a child's interests at home is so important because it gives you an opportunity to build on that interest and have a conversation about it at school.
Assessment is a really important aspect of providing appropriate intervention for children when they're very young because we need to identify the characteristics.
We observe daily through different parts of the day. We take anecdotal records, there's photographs, there's child samples, work samples.
We're looking at their patterns of strength, we're looking at their patterns of need, and then we're identifying adaptations that might be effective.
It's really important to include all the members of the team that are working with the child so that we can pick up as much information as possible, and also speaking to families and asking them questions. This is what I'm seeing at school, what are you noticing at home? And kind of gives you, again, another piece of assessment information.
She always takes the time to talk to me when I drop them off in the morning. Just give me an update on how Javi did the previous day, and just to let me know what they're doing through the day as the day goes on.
Each week when I fill out my individual child plans, I look at each child and I think, okay, what were some of the strengths I saw this week and what would I like to work on? Yes, there's pepperoni.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks.
After observing Javier and talking with his parents, Nilüfer wanted to ensure that he had plenty of opportunities to develop his oral language skills. One strategy she used was encouraging peer interaction.
At the Play-Doh table, the materials are open-ended enough that Javier and his friend Dominic can engage and play together, and I can be there to facilitate asking questions at different levels so they can both be participating in the same conversation, yet at their own pace.
While you sweet. While you sweet.
There you go. But you working together.
Nilüfer also gave Javier's parents some ideas for things they could do at home to support his language development.
Reading a book at night before he goes to bed, that's something that Miss Neal brought, and it's been very helpful. Javi enjoys that a lot, and we play the characters in the book, and we all take turns reading him a book each night.
We collaborate a lot at home with the ideas that Miss Nilüfer has given us. We've always sat down together and we talk about it as a family, how we can make little Javi's experience better. And being the littlest one in the house, you do get lost in the big, everyone being so big and talking for you. So as time has gone by, he has, excuse me, I have something to say, I have a question, which is very important, which we didn't teach him, but he's learned to have a voice in school, and he brought that home.
In terms of giving advice to new teachers and professionals, I think the teamwork is absolutely essential. Problem solving is absolutely essential. To understand that nobody has all the answers to all the questions, that it's okay to ask for help. So being willing to work with others, being willing to accept feedback, and most definitely being willing to work with families in very constructive ways.
Javi has shown a lot of improvement in the past few months, I would say, understanding, comprehending more, talking. So I think he's getting to the level that he needs to be.
So at the heart of what we do is making sure that children are experiencing meaningful experiences. And a great way to do that is by individualizing your approach for each child. And the way you individualize is through observation, through knowing where that child is at, through knowing and understanding where that child comes from, what their family life is like. And then adapting our curriculum, adapting how we approach that child to what we have observed. So earlier I had mentioned webbing or a curriculum web. So kind of already explained it, but the center of a curriculum web is one idea or like one developmental domain. And then you branch out all the different ways that you can address that idea or developmental domain. And then you could create even more branches, and it creates sort of this like spider web looking structure because you have something in the middle with a lot of different lines coming out of it. All right, can't really do small group, but I do invite and encourage you to think about the children you work with and listing their interests, and then creating a curriculum web based off of their interests.
When we start to think about children and programs, and particularly infants and toddlers, the biggest issue is how we respond to them in ways that are consistent with the ways in which their families respond to them. Early childhood educators were, I think, the first en masse to embrace the notion of anti-bias education in early childhood, a way of looking at the growth and development potential of children that took into account their cultural being, their cultural selves, with families, of course, and raising issues of bias and how culture gets responded to by the institutions that serve those children.
You know, it's an interesting thing. So many people feel, that's not me. I don't have bias. But implicit bias means that it's unconscious. We tend to allow that lens to be a part of the way that we view our relationships or the way we interact with children and families.
Too often, teachers see children as lacking when they come from a variety of cultural groups. So for example, if families don't speak English, we see that as a limitation for children. When in fact we know from a developmental standpoint that development occurs in all languages, and indeed, if children come to school from a family that speaks Spanish, if we were able to provide a continuous experience in Spanish, we would not have any disruption in the cultural continuity for that child. But in our programs where that disruption occurs, we often blame the kids and the families for not being able to keep up or not becoming fluent as quickly as we would like in English, without looking at the other side of the coin, which is our responses to what they bring to the setting. It makes more sense to me to think about how we can provide environments that are more continuous in terms of the cultural continuity for these children, so that there is no disruption in expectations, there is no disruption in their developmental progression.
Infant and early childhood mental health is really about supporting and building the adult's capacity to support children's health and wellness. It's not about fixing kids, but it's about supporting adults to really be able to help facilitate healthy growth and development for social emotional growth for children.
I would argue that our expectations for children are often a function of society's expectations. So we know, for example, that Native American children are behind in their school achievement, and African American kids are behind, and children whose first language is not English, they're behind in school. So what does that mean then about what our responsibilities are to change those outcomes for kids? How do we really get to a level where we can focus on the core, the essence of that problem? In my view, the essence of the problem is the way in which we respond to kids, our expectations for them, our beliefs fundamentally about their ability to achieve and to thrive in society.
There's this intersection, right, between race, social class, and gender. A great example of that is a teacher. She was a preschool teacher, and she's an African American woman. And she realized, wow, all this time I'm thinking that I'm an African American woman, I'm teaching and I'm educating and nurturing African American children, so I get it. I get their culture, I get who they are. But what I didn't realize is I didn't get the boys in my classroom. I didn't get their behavior. As a woman, I looked at behavior of boys as being rough housing, maybe being too aggressive, when yet it was just typical play for boys. And yet what that resulted in is more punitive types of approaches in terms of my interaction with my boys in my classroom. And she said, wow, I've got a bias, and I didn't even realize it. In terms of what we can do to address issues of equity and implicit bias, The first is really building awareness, and that is awareness that it exists. It allows us to step back and begin to really evaluate our relationships that we have with children and families, the reasons for some of our beliefs and our understandings that may be distorting our relationships. And so with a mental health consultation, it allows us to really have an opportunity to talk about our understandings about relationships and get deeper into the why behind it.
So, anti-bias education is teaching that supports children and their families as children develop a sense of identity in a diverse society. It is welcoming all children and families. And at that heart of that individualized education, it's just getting to know children and their families, accepting who they are, and seeing their strengths and playing to that. Anti-bias education helps children learn to be proud of themselves and where they come from, their families, and respect a range of human differences, as well as view human differences as strengths as opposed to obstacles, and to speak up for the rights of others. This begins with self-reflection and identifying any biases, prejudices, implicit or explicit, that we might have. I believe you do this in Teaching a Diverse Society. There's the implicit bias test from Harvard, but if you do want to take, is a good first step in uncovering any implicit biases we may have, because we all do have biases. So it is important to know what ours are so that we can be then more mindful of them when we may act on them without even knowing or realizing that we are. Yeah.
Now, teaching about tolerance to the very youngest children in school. The lessons are certainly not new, but in some communities, they're taking on a new urgency and relevance in the wake of deep racial divides, social tensions, and violence around the country. Special correspondent Kat Wise visits a pair of noteworthy programs in California. It's for our weekly series, Making the Grade.
We're going to take out the mirror now, we're going to look at ourselves, and we're going to make our own face.
In this Alameda, California preschool, a box of crayons with a multitude of colors is helping little kids learn big lessons.
So put your hand and decide what you think is the best suited for you.
Teacher Tiffany Battle asks the children to look carefully at their own skin color and their classmates' skin colors.
Again, let's put our hands in.
To notice differences and similarities.
I'm black and white.
The art project is just one of many ways children are introduced to an anti-bias curriculum here at the Child Unique Montessori School, a private tuition-funded program.
Okay, so go ahead and color your skin in.
Cindy Acker is the school's founder and principal.
Within any color of someone's skin, there are many, many different colors, and so we want them to appreciate the diversity within their own individuality. And then we want them to be able to see and question other children's differences.
If you add this lighter color to it, what do you think is going to happen?
It's going to be lighter.
We're different on the outside, but inside we have lungs, we have a heart, we have a mind, and that's the same.
Talking about racial differences is not new at the school. Acker started the program more than 30 years ago, and it was among the first of its kind in the country to focus on diversity and inclusion at such an early age. But she says the curriculum seems more important than ever.
To me, the things that are going on in the world today give us an indication that we need a major shift in how we perceive people, how we honor people, how we treat people. And because I'm a firm believer that it begins at the preschool level, I think that that's where we need to start. Sophie, are you going to make it out?
Acker points to racial divides witnessed in recent events like the violent neo-Nazi protests in Charlottesville, Virginia, the police shootings of black men, and the debate over NFL players taking a knee to protest racism.
What we have seen is a resurfacing or a surfacing of what we thought was absent but sits within the psyche of some individuals.
One thing I've been seeing is that
Louise Sturman Sparks has written several books about teaching anti-bias to preschoolers.
the truth is that young children notice differences very early. By the age of 3 and 4, they're asking questions. They're beginning to develop and to absorb the stereotypes and misinformation, discomforts. Don't like to call it prejudices. It's kind of like pre-prejudice. So the myth that they aren't noticing, the idea of being colorblind, actually harms kids.
Derman Sparks says preschool teachers who talk about the differences and similarities among their students create an environment where misinformation and fears can be addressed.
For instance, if you have dolls of different types and a child refuses to play with a doll that's got dark skin, teacher can say, how come you don't want to play with so-and-so? And depending on what the child says, you can then decide to help overcome whatever the discomfort is.
We are all different. That's exactly the atmosphere teacher Francesca Conterno hopes to create for her students at a public preschool.
Look at this boy. What's different about his eyes compared to his? His eyes are blue, yes. His eyes are blue, and I see Mariana's got blue eyes. And you made blue eyes in your picture up there. What about Kim? What color are Kim's eyes?
Black.
Yeah, they're definitely black.
Conterno teaches 3- and 4-year-olds in the Hayward Unified District.
Someone might hear about a program like this and think, gosh, race and racism or highlighting differences, that's not something that should be done in a classroom, especially a preschool classroom. How would you respond?
I would say, why not? It's the perfect setting. It is absolutely the perfect setting. We have families in the classroom. It's a safe place. People develop relationships. Perfect setup for honest conversations.
Conterno does not ask children directly about fears or misconceptions about race. Instead, she believes materials that highlight equality can provide a powerful message in the classroom. Derman Sparks agrees.
If most of the books show white people and very few show people of color, then that's a message for the teachers are white, or if the teacher's white, but the assistants are always people of color. These are all messages to kids about who matters, who's visible, who's not, who has power.
Conterno sees the sometimes uncomfortable questions children do ask about race and gender as teachable moments.
Too many times you see in classrooms, teachers will respond to that by play nice, or we're all friends in here, when it's a perfect opportunity to go a little bit deeper.
So you see how we have one shade of brown, we have even a lighter shade here, right? We have all of these different colors. So I have a feeling there's probably more than 2, right?
How was your day? You want to do the swinging?
Back at the Child Unique Montessori School, parent Shawnee Keck says she chose the program for her 3 children because of its strong focus on equity and social justice. But she says her husband did have questions about the anti-bias curriculum.
I have a tall white husband, and he was absolutely concerned, especially for our son who was in the elementary school, saying, does this make him feel worse? Does this make him feel like he might be, somebody that should be feeling bad about his whiteness? And I don't think so. I don't think it's not pie, just because you have a piece doesn't mean somebody else doesn't get a piece.
They said you can mix colors. Did you like that?
Amitra Mamdui also chose the school for its focus on diversity, but she points out that for 2-, 3-, and 4-year-olds, the conversation is kept very simple.
Of course, you don't start talking about the new Jim Crow or prison industrial complex. You're not starting that at a young age, but just to recognize that, okay, different colors exist because of melanin, and this is natural, and we're all different, but we're also similar. We bleed, we cry, we love.
Light a candle for peace, light a candle for love.
For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Kat Wise in Alameda County, California.
So I invite you all to reflect on that video, reflect on any thoughts or feelings that brought up, as well as to reflect on how you bring anti-bias curriculum into the classroom. If you do, if there's room for improvement. yeah, just take a couple moments to reflect. And then we also, actually, I got a little ahead of myself. So more reflection. What are some stereotypes, biases, or prejudices that you have held? When were you able to identify that these stereotypes, biases, or prejudices were harmful? What prompted this learning? How can you work to unlearn these old thinking habits? And then how can you incorporate anti-bias practices in your own curriculum with children? So I encourage you to pause the video and reflect on this. Okay. So now we're getting into chapter 5, week 5 content with curriculum areas and documentation. I might skip around in the PowerPoint, but I do encourage you to go through the PowerPoint, watch all the videos. Yeah, so first we're going to talk about curriculum areas. There are, oh gosh, I think this is 9. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. There's 10 main curriculum areas: math, science, language, literacy, music, sensory, fine motor, large motor, social emotional, art, and creativity. So in preschool, math encompasses counting, shapes, sequencing, cardinality. Science encompasses observing, experimenting, measuring, mixing. Language encompasses vocabulary, listening and understanding, communication, speaking. Literacy encompasses letter knowledge, print awareness, phonological awareness, and print motivation. Music encompasses rhythm, tempo, cadence, vocal expression, instruments. Sensory is that smell, touch, taste, hear, as well as sight. Fine motor is, oh no, go back, please. Okay. Fine motor is that grasping, that pincer grasp, painting, drawing, Play-Doh, even the small muscles in our jaw are fine motor muscles. Large motor, kicking, crawling, walking, running, pushing, pulling, those big movements. Social emotional, identifying emotions, responding to emotions, interacting with others, and then interacting with a group. And then art and creativity, we have expression, we have imagination, open-endedness, and interactiveness. Okay, I can't find my mouse. There it is. Okay. So, small group activity, if you want to do this, go for it. I'm going to skip it because there's no groups. And that was it for curriculum areas, was just going over the main curriculum areas. And now we're getting into documentation. And as we mentioned in last week's PowerPoint that we just went over, the remainder of individualized education begins with observing and documenting our observations, creating assessments based off of those observations. So documentation is truly at the core of early childhood, because if we do not observe and document what we see in children, we can then not individualize our approaches for children. And we need to be able to individualize not, how do I say this? Every child is different. Every child is unique and has a unique set of circumstances and needs. And if we're not able to observe and document those needs, we then cannot teach to those needs. So this video, it's 20 minutes long. Please watch it on your own time. I'm just trying to keep this shorter because if I upload a 2-hour video, it's going to take forever to upload. But yeah, please watch this video and then come back. And I invite you to reflect on, why is observation and documentation important? How does it support planning for learning and development? And then how does it assist in building relationships with families? So I invite you to reflect on this, pause this lecture after you have watched the video on your own time. So there's formal documentation and informal documentation. Formal documentation is developmental screening conducted within 45 days of first of attendance, and then ongoing assessments conducted at least 3 times per year. It is those formal observations. Informal documentation could be just like writing something on a Post-it note really quickly of something you observed and you want to tell the family, or yeah, ongoing observation documentation must be conducted on all children who attend the program for more than 90 days. So formal documentation is where you have like a formal chart that you're filling out. Informal are those quick little notes that you observe, talk about it with families, talk about it with coworkers. You're informally assessing, documenting, and observing throughout your day. Formal documentation examples of that would be the Ages and Stages questionnaire, the Teaching Strategies Gold, the CDC milestones, the Gold Objectives and Dimensions by WA Kids, the WA Kids alignment tools, the Early Learning Washington, Early Learning, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I've listed it before and I'm blanking on the name. Informal documentation, bulletin boards, wall displays, portfolios, journals, class books, quick little notes here and there. So I invite you to reflect on the type of documentation you currently use in your program. And then I also invite you to create a policy for formal documentation, a policy for informal documentation. Sorry. Include examples of documentation and how documentation will be stored, and then include a description of how documentation will be used with families. How will you communicate about the documentation? How will documentation serve as an area of conversation with families? Yep, invite you to reflect and do that. So we actually have curriculum philosophy and planning. Let me move my floating head so we can see. Curriculum philosophy and planning embedded in the WAC. The WAC is the Washington Administrative Code. It's the rules and regulations for early childhood. So with a curriculum philosophy and planning, an early learning provider must have written curriculum philosophy that describes the program of planned daily activities related to early childhood or child development. The curriculum philosophy must address all age groups being served, be informed by the Washington State Early Learning and Development Guidelines. That's what I was trying to talk about earlier, and may include how children develop emotionally, socially, cognitively, and physically, what early learning looks like or areas of focus for each age group being served, how the provider will meet cultural, dual language learner and special needs of children in care, how to guide learning and social interactions, the importance of play to a child's learning process, and for infants and toddlers, the importance of developing consistent, nurturing relationships with caregivers as a component of learning. So this is in the WAC. This is the WAC's words. It's in their 110-300-035, 0305. But yeah, using all of these guidelines, I invite you to create your own curriculum philosophy. What would you include in that? And then reflect on why a curriculum philosophy is important and how does it assist with families understanding how, what, oh my goodness, sorry. And how does it assist with families understanding how and what their child is learning? And then also, how does it communicate your own approach to learning? So that is it for this week. I do have our final project information. It's also available on Canvas in the final project module. For your final project, there's a couple of steps. The first step is creating an activity plan. This activity plan will be a new activity plan, so not an activity plan you've done before. You will then implement the activity plan with a child or group of children. And then you'll create a 3-minute presentation with slides that address, in your own words, define curriculum and describe the approach to curriculum that you used for the activity plan. In your own words, define developmentally appropriate practice and describe specific examples of how you use developmentally appropriate practice in your activity plan. In your own words, describe the value and benefits of play as learning and provide specific examples of how you use that in that activity plan that you implemented and how that encouraged play. And then add anything else you think would be beneficial for the class to know about your activity plan and the implementation of your activity plan. The presentation will be 3 minutes. The presentation will be done our very last class. Our last class is August 27th. So your presentation must be submitted to Canvas on August 26th. Again, we are presenting last class. The presentation is due the day before class. So submit that activity plan using the activity plan template we've been using and the presentation, the little 3-minute couple of slides by August 26th. Absolutely no late work will be accepted for the final. So please plan accordingly, start now. So yeah, no late work for the final because of the presentation and last day of class and stuff like that. So please plan your time wisely. If you have any questions, Canvas inbox me, email me, or ask during our next class. But yeah, so it's an activity plan, implementing that activity plan, and then a little 3-minute presentation. For the presentation, I'll be timing you for 3 minutes. If you aren't finished by 3 minutes, I will stop you. It will not count against you. As long as you verbally present in class, you are all set. You'll get all the points for the verbal presentation portion of that assignment. And if you are sick or cannot present, you'll be out of town or something like that, record yourself for 3 minutes presenting your slides and then submit that recording to Canvas so that I can play it for our class. Yeah, that's our final project. And then upcoming assignments, our class participation is now due on Monday, so not today, Monday. Friday, we have our discussion, and then Monday, we have a 5th activity plan, a mid-quarter check-in, and our class participation. So yeah, that is all. I'm going to say goodbye really, really quickly because this is so long and I'm so sorry. I hope everybody has a fantastic week, and I will see everybody next week.